Hello, my name is Shama Mohamed and I'm applying for the role of Chief Ethical Officer at Abercrombie& Fitch. In this presentation, I'll outline why I'm the ideal candidate to lead the company's ethical transformation. I'll also show how my reputation strategy can strengthen A&F's reputation and position it as a leader in ethical, sustainable fashion. Over the next 10 minutes, I'll draw on relevant business ethic theories, lessons from case studies, and practical recommendations, all aimed at building a brand that is inclusive, socially responsible, and future proof. Abercrombie and Fitch's reputation, once built on exclusivity, suffered a severe collapse due to a series of discriminatory hiring practices, exclusionary marketing, and a toxic corporate culture under former CEO Mike Jeffries. The White Hot documentary revealed how these practices were not isolated missteps, but deeply embedded in the brand's DNA. The company's look policy actively excluded minorities from customer facing roles, while advertising over sexualized teenagers, prioritizing shock value and image over ethics. My mission is clear: rebuild A&F into a sustainable, inclusive, and ethical leader in the fashion industry, one that not only meets the expectations of today's socially conscious consumers, but becomes a benchmark for ethical fashion globally. That means going beyond surface level changes to implement real measurable cultural transformation. So, why am I the ideal candidate for this position? I bring over a decade of HR leadership experience in the clothing retail sector, specializing in equity, diversity, inclusion, compliance, and ethical business practice. I have successfully led cultural transformation projects that improve staff diversity, reduce turnover, and strengthen my employee reputation. My approach is grounded in stakeholder theory by Freeman 1984, which recognizes that long term success depends on meeting the needs of all stakeholders, that is, employees, customers, suppliers, and the wider community, not just shareholders. By applying this principle, I've helped brands align their operational strategy with their values, resulting in stronger brand loyalty and reduced reputational risk. My decision making process integrates three key ethical frameworks. First, consequentialism, which ensures that every decision considers its long term impacts on all stakeholders, not just short term gains. Second, deontological ethics, rooted in Kant's philosophy, which prioritizes doing the right thing regardless of profit. Finally, virtue ethics, drawing from Aristotle, which focuses on cultivating integrity, honesty, and accountability within the organization. I combine these with practical tools like the triple bottom line, balancing people, planet, and profit, and stakeholder mapping to identify and manage competing interests effectively. This ensures decisions are not only ethical in theory but workable in practice. Let's have a look at A&F's past scandals. The Netflix documentary White Hot: The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie and Fitch by Clayman in 2022 detailed how the brand's carefully constructed cool image was built on exclusion and discrimination. Hiring policies dictated appearance, banning certain styles, religious dresses, and body types. Advertising campaigns hypersexualized teenage models to create controversy and attract media attention, as also stated by Horton. These practices resulted in multiple lawsuits, consumer boycotts, and a severe loss of brand trust. Importantly, this wasn't just a business crisis, it was an ethical one, rooted in the prioritization of image over human dignity. The damage was not limited to public perception. Internally, the toxic culture eroded morale, excluded talented staff, and stifled diversity. The most powerful moment for me was clip 3, where former employees described how minority staff were systematically excluded from visible roles. The filmmaker used close up interviews and archival training materials to reveal that diversity wasn't just neglected, it was actively suppressed. This clip's message is clear: ethics cannot be an afterthought or a marketing campaign. As Crane 2021 notes, ethical branding must be backed by genuine internal culture change. This insight will guide my approach at Abercrombie and Fitch, embedding ethics into the company's operational core so that it shapes every policy, hiring decision, and marketing message. Let's compare the A&F case with a similar one known as the American Factory case study. A&F's case shares strong parallels with the documentary American Factory by Zhang and Richard in 2019. In both, leadership prioritized short term objectives over long term stakeholder welfare. For ANF, that meant exclusivity over inclusivity. For American Factory, it meant cost efficiency over worker rights. From a shareholder theory perspective, Friedman 1970, both companies were fulfilling their duty to maximize returns. However, from a stakeholder theory lens, Friedman 1984, they neglected broader responsibilities, resulting in reputational damage, employee unrest, and ethical failings. The lesson here is clear. Without stakeholder focused governance, businesses risk short term wins at the expense of long term survival. Stakeholder theory by Freeman in 1984 argues that long term success depends on creating value for all stakeholders employees, customers, suppliers, and communities, not just shareholders. Shareholder theory by Friedman in 1970 says management's primary duty is to maximize returns for owners within the law. Abercrombie's past decisions reflected shareholder primacy, prioritizing a narrow brand image and short term sales over employee dignity and inclusion, which produced lawsuits, boycotts, and reputational loss. Stakeholder theories would demand inclusive hiring, stakeholder engagement, and measurable EDI KPIs. Shareholder theorists might defend past choices as profit driven strategy. My plan is to deliberately shift governance toward the stakeholder model because protecting people and community reduces legal and reputational risk, which in turn protects long term shareholder value. Now let's have a look at the B Corp certification. So, B Corp certification offers credibility and external accountability, demonstrating commitment to high social and environmental standards according to B Lab. However, as the conversation warns, certification doesn't guarantee genuine ethics. There are examples of certified companies still engaging in questionable practices, which shows that B Corp can become a badge without real change. My recommendation is to first embed B Corp aligned standards into everyday practice, especially in supply chain ethics, governance transparency, and employee welfare, and only then pursue certification. This ensures the recognition reflects genuine progress, not just a PR milestone. At the end of the day, we want to bring a positive change to the brand image of Abercrombie and Fitch. And if we do the certification without implementing real change, it's not going to make a difference to any of our shareholders or stakeholders. Since 2017, ANF has made visible changes to its marketing, diverse casting, inclusive messaging, and a shift away from the exclusive all American aesthetic. However, Ellison Clayman in 2022 highlights a key issue. The company has not fully reckoned with its past. Without public acknowledgement of previous harm, there's a risk of woke washing, where ethical messaging is used for image without substantive change. Ethical marketing should not just reflect diversity, it should be part of a transparent process of repair, showing stakeholders how the brand has changed and what safeguards are in place to prevent regression. So, here are a few strategic recommendations that I'm giving to restore ethical leadership at ANF. First, embed EDI into the company's core strategy with measurable KPIs, annual public reporting, and direct accountability at board level. Second, overhaul the supply chain using the UN Global Compact and Fair Labor Association standards, ensuring all suppliers meet ethical benchmarks. Third, shift to purpose driven marketing that tells authentic stories of sustainability and inclusion, backed by verifiable actions. Finally, implement a restorative justice program, issuing a public acknowledgement of past exclusionary practices coupled with community investment and diversity scholarships. These actions will position ANF as a genuine ethical leader, not just an image driven brand who's trying to put up an image that they're not being able to keep up to. For further reading, I recommend two references for Miss Fran. First, the UN Global Compact Business Guide, a practical roadmap for embedding human rights, labor rights, environmental care, and anti corruption into core strategy. Second, the B Corp Handbook, a step by step process for achieving and sustaining B Corp certification. Together, these provide both the ethical foundation and the practical pathway for ANF to embed long term ethical leadership. In closing, I bring the skills, experience, and ethical frameworks needed to transform ANF into a brand synonymous with integrity, inclusivity, and sustainability. This role is not just about compliance, it's about building a culture that makes ethics part of ANF's DNA. By embedding stakeholder focus, governance, authentic marketing, and transparent reporting, we can ensure that ANF not only regains public trust but becomes a leader in ethical fashion. Thank you for considering me for this position.